everyone, my name is Mary Grandy and today I will be showing you how to bake a pumpkin pie from scratch. The recipe I'm using is fairly simple and only uses 10 ingredients. If you were to buy a pumpkin pie at the store, those 10 ingredients would probably jump to about 20 ingredients because of all of the preservatives, artificial ingredients, and additives that are thrown into the mix. Before we get started, let's preheat our oven to 350 degrees. I've already washed off the skin of our little sugar pumpkin because even though we're not going to be using the skin in the pie, it's still important to wash off vegetables before you cook with them. We'll be using a serrated knife to cut our pumpkin in half. Start around the stem and use a sawing motion to cut into our pumpkin. So there's a lot of pulp and seeds in our pumpkin, and we're only going to be using this section of the pulp right here for the pie. So I'm going to use this ice cream scoop to scoop out the seeds and the pulp, just like you would for a jack-o'-lantern. And you can save the seeds for baking afterwards. They make a great snack. So now we've finished scooping out most of the pulp and all of the seeds out of our pumpkin. And we're gonna put it in this oven-proof baking dish and toss it in the oven. Let it bake for about 45 to 90 minutes. And I suggest setting a timer for 40 minutes because every oven is different and your oven might cook faster than mine. Mine tends to be a little bit slow, so mine might take a longer time to bake the pumpkin. But if you set a timer for 40 minutes and you check up on the pumpkin, take a fork, poke it, and see if it's soft. Once it's soft, it's ready to be used in the pie. So let's put our pumpkin in the oven. While our pumpkin is roasting in the oven, we can get started on our crust. So I've already measured out 1.5 cups of flour, which we can dump in our bowl. Next, we're going to add a pinch of salt, not too much, just enough to sprinkle in like that. And we'll take our fork and mix that around a little bit. Next, we are going to measure out 1/3 of a cup of butter, which if you look on the butter stick, it says that 5 1/3 tablespoons equals 1/3 of a cup. So we'll count out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 1/3. You can kind of eyeball it a little bit. Cut that there. And save the rest of your butter because we'll be using that later for the filling. We'll take our butter and use our fork to cut the butter into the dough. It's gonna get a little sticky, so be patient. Then once you have all your butter in the bowl, you can take your fork and mix around the butter with the flour and salt mixture until your dough resembles breadcrumbs. So this takes a little while. Be patient with it. Have some fun. A little bit of water to help the dough stick together. So I already have some water poured into this little bowl here. It's cold water that helps the dough stick together better than warm water would. So we're going to use 4 tablespoons of water, dropping them in one at a time, kind of sprinkling it around, mix it up a little bit, sprinkle some more water in. And this will be the hardest part of making our pie, which is kneading the dough on your wooden cutting board. So we'll take all of the dough out of the bowl. And take our hands, squish the dough together a little bit, and I can tell just from feeling the dough that it's a little dry, so we can add just a little bit more water. So we've rolled out our pie crust, and as you can see, it doesn't look perfect. That's okay. You can patch it up as you put it in the pie plate. So I'm going to use a glass pie plate. You can also use metal, but I like to use glass. And remember, we have a lot of butter in the crust, so we don't need to grease the pie plate. And we're just going to transfer our crust over into the plate. Now, it hangs over a little bit in some places. That's fine because that means you can tear off this section and patch the hole that's over here. And we still have a lot of time left before our pumpkin is done roasting. So in the meantime, you could go bird watching or split firewood for the winter. Our pumpkin is finished roasting and we're just going to put the rest of it into a bowl and scrape it out with a spoon. The next step is to take an electric hand mixer to puree the pumpkin. That's a good consistency for our pie. So we can get going on making the filling. We're going to start off by sifting together our dry ingredients. So I have here 1 cup of sugar. We can toss in there. Then we're going to need 1 teaspoon of cornstarch. We got our teaspoon here. Next we can add 1/2 teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice. And last but not least, just a little pinch of salt. So you measure it out in your hand and sprinkle it in. I'm going to mix in the pumpkin puree. Again, you can use the fork to mix that up together. Then next we'll add in 1.5 cups of milk. Our next wet ingredient is 2 eggs. So we're going to crack them into a little bowl and beat them separately in the bowl. Once those are beaten, you can add them in to your mixture. Next, we're going to add 1.5 tablespoons of melted butter. We're going to add in just a little bit of honey, and it has kind of a fall flavor. So our filling is looking like it is all mixed up and ready to go into our pie filling. So we'll take that and carefully pour into the filling. And we're ready to put that in the oven. So we're going to start it in the oven at 450 degrees and bake it for 15 minutes. After those 15 minutes, lower the temperature to 350 degrees and let it bake for another 50 minutes. While the pie is baking, there are other things you can do. Start your holiday decorating. Read a 900-page novel. Play a board game with your pet. Here's our finished pie, and I really encourage you to cook at home because when you cook in your own kitchen, you can control what goes into your meals, making them healthier and more wholesome. So I hope this video helped you learn how to bake a pumpkin pie. Happy cooking!